Week 2 is in the books with Week 3 on deck. One more week till the rugged 7A West Conference schedule starts. We'll break it down on this week's Prep Rally.
You're watching the Prep Rally Podcast.
Welcome to the Prep Rally Podcast, sponsored by West Termite, Pest and Lawn. I'm Graham Thomas with the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. I'm joined in the studio with NWA Democrat-Gazette sports reporter Rick Fires. Leland Barclay joins us from the River Valley. Guys, I said it in the opening. We've got another week, just one more week to go. It's almost like the start of SEC play, but 7A West play will kick off next week. Some conferences around the state have already started, but that's the one I think everybody's really waiting on, and we got some really fun things to talk about. But that's all next week. We just got to get through this week first, and so it's kind of a light week on the schedule this week. But
I think we got to be honest with people listening. They should change this to week as a WEAK, because it's become a thing now. A lot of the schools like to have the week off before conference. That's understandable. Just makes it a little bit tougher for the fans, a little bit tougher for us. Normally, we got a smorgasbord of game. We can't even get to enough games, and now we're struggling to find some good games to go to this week.
Well, and Leland, you and I have been kind of examining the September 15th night since about July, I think. Well, what are we going to do?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess this is probably the fourth year of inserting the week 0 into the schedule, I think, maybe year 5. But anyway, I remember when they passed that, I was at the All-Star game that summer before that, going into it, and I talked to several coaches to do a story on how they were going to approach this, having a week off. And almost across the board, the coaches said that they might take week 1 or week 2 off, but they did not want to go into conference play off an open week. So they wanted to play weeks maybe 0 and 1 and 3, or 0, 2 and 3, but almost across the board, they did not want to have an open week going into conference play. And now, 4 or 5 years later into it, now it's changed. It's flipped almost entirely the other direction, in that they've got 3 conference games under their belts. They can go back and analyze things. Like Southside yesterday, kind of took the day off, just lifted weights, looked at some film, because, they're open on Friday. And so now teams are almost across the board taking this week off to get ready for conference games.
Yeah, and, some teams have some weird things on their schedule. Like, I'll give you an example for Siloam Springs. They don't get their off week, I think, until the week before their last game. So they've got to go, 8 or 9 weeks in a row, which used to be kind of regular now. But so anyway, we've got just a handful of games. We've got a little more than a handful, but and a lot of them are on the road, and a lot of them are quite a ways away. So, but before we get into what we got for this week, let's take a look back at last week, and we'll kind of start. I'll start us off here. Rogers Mounties were at Farmington. They win 38-3. It was a closer game for a long time. Rogers, Dane Williams had to go out of the game for a little bit and was hurt. I don't know if it was an ankle or a knee or whatever, but he eventually came back in, and the Mounties were really, really sloppy for a long time, cleaned things up, and then pulled away from a tough Farmington team. But they're now 3-0, and so now Southside wins at win, as fun as that is to say. But now we've got this looming showdown on September 22nd out Southside, Leland, and
huge.
That's going to be a fun night, because both those teams are off now. They're both 3-0. They're both off this week, and not to jump ahead to next week's show, but that's kind of what everybody was pointing to after the Rogers game last week for sure.
Well, you said it's we don't want to jump ahead. I think we jumped ahead probably back during the middle of the summer, looking at that week, because that's going to be a huge game for both of those teams because when we look at the 7A West, and we talked about how we're anxious for the 7A West to start. I think after Bryant's loss to Parkview last week, now maybe the entire Class 7A is open for a nice run there. So the 7A West, Bentonville and Fayetteville have looked very good, and we'd have to say at this point they're probably the favorites at this point. And that's why that game, Rogers and Southside both being 3-0, and we thought there was a really good chance they were going to be 3-0 going into that game. And sure enough, they are. And it's not only are they 3-0, but for the most part, they've looked good doing it. So yeah, that's a huge game, and they both have an extra week to prepare for it. So that's going to be real interesting.
Fayetteville thoroughly dismantled Northside last week. They're 3-0 too, and I believe we're going to open up conference play at Bentonville West next week, and that'll be another big one.
Yeah, probably came back with a win, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
So that will be just another exciting game to look forward to next week. But again, they're off this week. They've got their off week, and but a very impressive win. Our own Walter Woody was there, and just. I really, truly, in my heart, believe Northside's better than what they've been the last couple of weeks. Just they've had some injuries. They're trying to sort some things out, and turnovers.
Wow,
and,
my goodness.
It can kind of snowball on you. In the 5A West, Shiloh Christian had a really big win against Victory Christian at Champion Stadium last week. Pea Ridge made it to 3-0. Harrison had a big home win, big bounce back at Harrison over Batesville, 55-10. Alma won 35-0 at Pryor, Oklahoma. Made the trip up there for that. Prairie Grove beat Gravette. They're 2-0, but they do play this week on the road at Metro Christian. So that 5A West is kind of shaping up there. Leland there's a lot of good football teams in that conference, I think, but only 4 of them are going to get to go to the playoffs. So
only 4 of the 8, which means there's going to be some really good teams that's going to be left out. And I know it's probably way too early to start tiebreakers, but that could be a big part of the 5A West.
Yep.
Hey, I went to that scrimmage, Pea Ridge at Elkins, and Elkins just dominated that. They're for us. And I was somebody was getting all hyped. I said, man, just calm down. It's just a scrimmage. Doesn't mean a lot.
Yep.
And Pea Ridge really didn't look very, very good at all. Of course, Elkins is going to be really good. They're going to be one of the top contenders as they go on. But, man, that staff got back together again and went over there and then changed some things. And here they are 3-0. I never would believe it. I would have believed 2-1, but 3-0. So good job by those guys up there at Pea Ridge.
Let me give a shout out to Coach Keelan and the boys over at Harrison too. I think they're a pretty good football team. And I know they lost a disappointment to Mountain Home a couple weeks ago, and otherwise they'd be 3-0. But that says a lot about the Goblins' character over there to bounce back and get a big win. And they kind of think of themselves as a contender in that 5A West. And then there's Shiloh. They've had some adversity with Bo Williams. I tell you what, another big night. He could have been our player of the week again, Rick.
Absolutely, easily.
And so they have a big win. They're going to have a tough one this week at Lincoln Christian and the Tulsa area. So let's move on down to the River Valley, Leland, and you'll start us off here. You were at the Franklin County Feud.
Absolutely. Big rivalry game, Charleston and Ozark. Ozark scored twice early, took advantage of a fumble on a kickoff, made it 14-0 real quick. Then Charleston held them 5 straight possessions, made it 14-7. And then Ozark scored twice in the fourth quarter, including kind of an odd combination between a backup quarterback and a receiver who is usually a blocking back that they say never ever catches the ball in practice. And he caught a 36-yard touchdown pass, and Ozark put it away 28-7.
Yeah, and Charleston, boy, they're gonna have a tough one this week. They go to Nashville. And it's very possible they could be 0-3, but I kind of feel like they're going to get better. They're going to get into conference play, and we haven't seen the last of the Charleston Tigers.
Oh, they start, they start a young team, including a sophomore quarterback. And it was funny. I talked to Coach Ricky May and Doc Crowley back during the summer, and they talked to each other, and they were kind of, I guess, sort of laughing about the fact that they were looking at their schedules and thinking that they both may be 0-3 at the bottom of the conference standings going into conference play. Now, Boonville did beat Ozark,
Right.
so but now they've got to go to Harding Academy. Charleston has to go to Nashville, so they could be 0-3 and 1-2 respectively going into conference play.
Well, that's a great segue into Boonville. They really played a tough Camden Fairview team in week 2 at Boonville, and did not defeat Fairview, but really played them tough. And
You got to give them credit for playing a quality team like that.
Oh, yeah.
With speed like that from South Arkansas. Wow.
Well, and I'd heard a story. Of course, I think their offensive line averaged 275 or 280 across the front. And somebody told me this week that they went at a team camp that Camden Fairview went to at, I think it was UA Monticello, that their entire offensive line was offered scholarships.
My goodness. That's, woo, man.
Well, you got to have the big old uglies up front. We know
Well,
about
that's-
that.
I
Ask
always.
Bo Williams. He tells you all the time about his offensive line.
Yes, sir. How about Greenwood? Man, all this noise about, Rick, you had it in your picks, all this thunder coming out of Mountain Home, 2 straight weeks of 500 yards of offense, and Greenwood lays the hammer down on the Bombers. And, and they had 600-something yards of offense. But what's really impressive to me, and it sticks out, and we've talked about it on more than one occasion on this podcast, is that Greenwood defense, man, they only gave up like 160 yards total, and 130 of that was in the first half. So, Greenwood, how about it?
Yeah, I go from Mountain Home, man. They got some reality, a dose of reality. But I hope they're not too discouraged because Greenwood. What's that song? I'm a football town. We're a football town. They are, and they got a dose of reality. So they're not as good as they thought they were, but they can't be as bad they played last week. So I hope that Mountain Home bounce back. But Greenwood, Pulaski Academy, you talking about can't wait till conference play, all those big teams start meeting each other. Wow.
Yeah, I'll save my Greenwood stuff for the
Okay. Understood.
give me 5
yeah.
or the 5.
Top 5.
My top 5, because the defensive, I love to sink my teeth in the stats. I know Rick's not a stat guy, but I love them, and I think a lot of times, man, you can just sink your teeth into some stats and find some really good stuff.
We'll look forward to that later on in the show. One more item of note out of the River Valley Leland. I mean, Southside goes on the road and gets a dominant win at Wynn, and I don't know what you've heard from the Southside folks on that one just yet. Maybe you got that little coming for later too. But I thought Southside would go on the road and dominate that one.
I thought they'd win at Wynn. But I was surprised that it was a mercy rule because, Wynn scored 72 points on them last year, and Wynn can run the football, and they did some on Friday night. But yes, Southside dominated that one, went up 35-0 in the third quarter, and started the clock running early and got on the bus early.
All right. Well, we'll move on into this week's schedule, and we'll talk about just a few of the games that we're looking at. Our game of the week is going to be Kansas City Rockhurst at Bentonville, and Rick, you and I are planning on being there for that one.
Yeah, love it.
This is kind of it's a matchup we've seen before over the years. I remember when I was covering Bentonville in the late 2000s, Coach Lundy was still there. They were playing guys like Huntsville and Nettleton, their non-conference schedule, and Coach Lundy was kind of resigning to the fact that he was going to have to go out of state to get some really good quality non-conference. And then, then they started playing, Texas High, and they played a Euless Trinity out of Texas, and they played these other teams, and Rockhurst was one of them that they kind of picked up. So this will be the 10th meeting between Rockhurst and Bentonville. Bentonville has won 6 of the previous 9 wins, including 2 straight, I believe. and they're going to face the Tigers are going to face a pretty good Rockhurst team that has got some players on them.
I think that's Coach Lund. When I was covering for the Southwest Times Record, the newspaper down there in Fort Smith years and years ago, Lunny always wanted to go play. He was one of the first ones wanted to go play them Tulsa area teams to test his team before they got in conference play. And he's continued it with Rockhurst when he's at Bentonville and some other. I think they played a team out of New Jersey a few years ago. So a lot of teams are taking off. But you know who's not taking off? The Bentonville Tigers. And that's going to be a great game. I've been to Rockhurst. It's just on the Kansas-Missouri border. It's a private school, got a lot of history. There's some guys in the NFL that came out of Rockhurst. So really looking forward to that on Friday night.
Yeah, and, Coach Grant kind of shared with me that they don't have this game locked up for next year. So we don't know if it'll continue or not. Maybe I think both teams – they like playing it because they both had some success in it. We'll just see what happens.
Yeah, work it out. Meet halfway at Noble, Missouri or something.
Springdale Harbor is going to host Mustang, Oklahoma, and we'd like to see a bounce back from Harbor. They had a tough loss at Bixby, Oklahoma, had a week off, and like to see what happens there. Van Buren going to Greenbrier. This is an exciting one.
Conference.
The Pointers are. They're coming off of they were off last week, right, Leland?
Yes. Yeah, this is this is the last year of the 19-team Class 6A classification. Mm-hmm. So, because, 6 of the 9 schools in the 6A West will make the playoffs. So, normally they'd be looking at, finishing in the top 6 of 8. Well, now it's 6 of 9. So that's 3 teams that will not make the playoffs. So kind of looks at Greenwood, Little Rock Christian, and Pulaski Academy as the top 3 in that conference. Mm-hmm. Well, that means everybody else is fighting it out for the other 3. So, just like the Rogers Southside game, Van Buren going to Greenbrier, that's a big game for them too.
Well, Greenbrier, you saw them last week.
I saw them last week. They're very, they got a veteran coach over there, and Randy Tribble, and they got off to a good start. I love the teams that make these long trips, and sometimes, just kind of a little stagnant when you get off the bus and start stretching and everything. Oh, my God. But not Greenbrier. They went zoom down the field, took the big lead. To Siloam's credit, came back on them a little bit, but Greenbrier just too much of them. They alternate the quarterbacks. They got 2 quarterbacks there and got some running backs. So Van Buren, you better get ready for them.
Greenbrier put up 50 in that game. And, one of the things I always love to look at on the stats, is how balanced teams are. And Greenbrier ran for 217 and passed for 288 with 2 different quarterbacks doing it. So anytime a team can go 200, that means some balance. They ran for 4 touchdowns. They threw for 3. So you're exactly right. 60 offensive plays, 505 yards of offense for Greenbrier last week against Siloam Springs.
How about this one? I know not Leland. Well, I'm sure Leland will be excited about it too. But I know Henry Apple is very excited to be going to Shiloh Christian at Lincoln Christian on Friday night in Tulsa. Shiloh looks like they're the real deal now. They're 2-0. They're going to play the number 7 team in Oklahoma. So that'll be a real showdown over there.
Especially with a freshman quarterback. Is he back? Or
he's hurt. They had another guy. I think a sophomore maybe, or.
Well, they got just as long as they got Bo Williams and that offensive line up there, and they got other players. So you just never. The changes happen at some schools, but Shiloh just keeps rolling on.
Yep. We've got 2 more games we want to talk about on this week's schedule. One. I know I'd love to be there for it. Boonville at Harding Academy. Leland, that's you saw that game last year, didn't you?
Yes. I mostly went. One of the biggest reasons why I wanted to go last year, just to watch the Harding Academy kicker, which Ferry, he's at Mississippi State, and I think he was the special teams player of the week last week for Mississippi State. So, but Harding Academy is still very good. They've got a junior quarterback who's really, really good. So, it looks like Harding Academy is about the same that they always have been.
And they got a linebacker committed to the Razorbacks. I mean, they're really, really good.
Yeah, I think that's the Harding University head coach's son, Wyatt Simmons.
See, that's one of the things. You don't think of Searcy as a hotbed for high school football, but it makes sense, though. Harding University over there, and there's a lot of the coaches' kids that play on these teams. And I said, wow, look at that. And, they may get a couple more kids from that Searcy area. But I was really impressed with them when I saw them a couple years ago at Boonville. And they beat Boonville pretty, I don't know if it's last year or year before, but that is a really great program over there on the east side of the state.
Well, and just the last game we're going to highlight, Leland, it's the game you're going to go to this week, the Mansfield at Waldron game. I don't know how many Friday nights you've ever spent in Waldron, but this will be the week.
Well, I guess I'll tell off of my age a little bit. The last time I covered a game in Waldron was when Sean Kearney was on the way to an Associated Press running back spot, which was back in I guess it was probably 2000s, maybe even back in the 90s.
So you're 74?
He was really good. He was a 2,000-yard rusher for Waldron. In fact, Coach Alan Rettman was the head coach at Waldron that year, and they lost to Pulaski Academy in the first round of the playoffs. So that tells you Pulaski Academy was in Waldron's classification. So that tells you how long ago it was.
I hear the Charbroiler is the place to go before the game, so if you're needing a good bite to eat or something.
Okay.
That's what I hear. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will get into our top 5.
If you're enjoying this podcast, consider a newspaper subscription to the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette or the River Valley Democrat-Gazette. We have a special offer for our podcast listeners, so visit nwaonline.com/podcast23 to get started. You can also click the subscribe button on our websites, nwaonline.com and rivervalleydemocratgazette.com, or call us at 479-684-5509 and be sure to say that you're a podcast listener. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Prep Rally Podcast, sponsored by West Termite Pests and Lawn. Graham Thomas, Rick Fires, Leland Barclay. We've been chatting up the games in week 3, and we're going to get into our top 5 for the week. Rick,
Okay.
if you're not talking about Bryant and Little Rock Parkview, then I don't know what's wrong with you.
Hey, but I want to start here. I know we're not in basketball season. When we talk about top 5, that's what's going on last week in the largest classification. I got to start off with the University of Arkansas Sports Hall of Honor. They had some former Razorback. They had Houston, but man, I got to mention our gal Kimberly Jenkins.
How about that?
Back then, it was Kimberly Wilson. She's an outstanding Razorback basketball player. She still ranks 5th all time on the scoring list. When she played 120 games there, and, you don't want to get in I don't care if you're 18 years old in grade shape. You don't want to get in a game of one-on-one with her. She's just an outstanding person. We value coaches who will talk to us regardless whether you win or lose. She's always going to work with you on your feature story. She coached at Valley Springs, come over to Harbor, and they've got a great program over there. So congratulations to Kimberly Jenkins. The stunner of the week, Parkview, Class 5A Parkview ends Bryant's winning streak. Parkview being 28. Ended Bryant's 24-game winning streak. First loss to an Arkansas school since 2018, a span of 54 games. I think it was North Little Rock that beat them. Bentonville West, they were disappointed. They lost that first game to Cabot. That's a game they lost 21-18. I'm sure they thought they could win, but then they could really come back and beat Little Rock Central. I put that in here because it's kind of twofold. I'm kind of really happy for the bounce back for Bentonville West, but just what's happened to the Little Rock Central program? 64-0. That's a storied program, not only in Arkansas but across the country. Not only for what happened in 57, but man, all them great teams, the Wilson, Matthews, and all that. So you really feel bad. I hope they can get that straightened out, whatever is going on down there. Moving a little bit to Fayetteville. Fayetteville's 3-0. We knew they was going to be good. They crushed Northside, which that's another Northside traditional program. You hope they can get their mojo back. But Fayetteville's 3-0 for the first time since 2016. We got this bye week for them, and then they start off at Bentonville West up there at Centerton, and that's going to be a tough place to play over there. Finally, I want to end my 5 for 7A with the volleyball. Fayetteville, a dominant program, defending champion. They won 3-1 at Bentonville West. Outside hitter Reagan Sharp had 25 kills, 12 digs, and that's a great effort. A very athletic young lady. So Fayetteville again on top. Coach Phelan got them rolling.
Hey, in Fayetteville this week on Thursday plays at Fort Smith Southside. Our own Paul Boyd will be making the trip down there for that one. So we're excited to see how that one goes. All right, top 5, Class 6A and below. I'm going to start mine off with Harrison, with their bounce back win with Batesville 55-10. Braden Long, 4 touchdowns in that game, the running back from Harrison. Another just a real big offensive performance, Gentry Pioneers, man. They had 640 yards of offense against Quitman and really just kind of controlled the game. There have been a couple of changes at Gentry. Addie Taylor, who was going to be the starting quarterback, is they're using him all over the place on offense at running back, receiver, quarterback. And they moved a sophomore named Talon Williams in at quarterback, and he had a big night. So kind of keep your eye on the Gentry Pioneers. Justin Bigham and his staff do a great job over there. Greenland with the 14-7 win against Berryville, and Coach Cody Napier, who I enjoyed visiting with, here in the preseason and at media days. He gets his first win for the Greenland Pirates head coach. Just a great job, and I know he's real excited. He's a Greenland alum, and he's gonna, they're gonna do good things over here with him as head coach. Rick, you mentioned Elkins earlier. Deshaun Chairs had a big night on Friday night. 141 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, and a 99-yard kickoff return. Man,
those are exciting.
It's like the triple in baseball, right? It's the most exciting play you can have. In high school, you can't have 100 yards. You can't. It's got to be 99. You got to get it at the 1. And Lincoln, how about Lincoln? The Lincoln Wolves, they're 3-0. They were down 14-0 against Mena, the hometown of Lincoln coach Reed Mendoza.
Yeah.
They scored 25 unanswered points to take the lead, and eventually they win the ball game in a shootout. I think it was 45-42. And I'm gonna give you. We're gonna have a bonus here, bonus top 5. I'm gonna give a shout out to the Siloam Springs cross country team. They traveled to Galveston, Texas, for the Galveston Beach Run over the weekend. It's an incentive trip for some of their kids. Not everybody got to go. You had to earn it.
Yeah.
Earn the right to get to go. So the Siloam Springs boys, in whatever division they were in, they won that division, led by Nathan Hallbaker, who's also going to be a good basketball player for them. But that's the only division they were able to compete in as a team. But to go all the way down there to Galveston, Texas, and run on the beach, and then get to play in the beach after the run, that's going to be the best part about that. After a good hot run and get to chill in the Gulf, sounds pretty fun. So that's my top 5 plus a bonus. Leland, what you got?
I want to go back to Greenwood, and yes, they had 640 yards of offense, scored 8 touchdowns. They were up 35-7 at the half. But again, the defense for Greenwood is just phenomenal. Tell me if you've heard this name before. Cash Archer with 2 more sacks brings him to 8 for the season. Brady Mackey had an interception. Landon Nelms had an interception. And I guess the most telling thing that I saw, Greenwood's defense had, in addition to the 2 sacks, they had 11 tackles for lost yardage, which is just phenomenal. They held Mountain Home's ground game to 23 carries for 39 yards, 166 yards of offense in all, 6 first downs, forced Mountain Home to punt 8 times.
Now, let me ask you a question on that tackles for loss. So a tackle for loss and a sack are 2 different things, right?
Well, no, technically, statistically, a sack is recorded as a tackle for loss. Okay. I always try to kind of, in the story or when I'm talking about it, differentiate it because, to not include it. So they had 11 true tackles for losses, probably on, out of those running plays. So that just tells you about Greenwood's defense, their front seven. And then you've got the Brady Mackey and Landon Elms intercepting passes, in the back end. So Greenwood's defense is for real. Southside went on the road, and they didn't get the 400 yards rushing like they had, but only because of the fact that they only ran 31 offensive plays on Friday night, still had 326 yards of offense. So they averaged 11 yards per play.
That's amazing.
Amari Tucker, 9 carries, 111 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Isaac Gregory, only 5 carries, but 80 yards. So Southside improved to 3-0 going into conference play. Mountainburg went to Cedarville and won the Treasure Chest Trophy and earned Zach Dean, the second-year head coach at Mountainburg, his first win over the rival Pirates, 17-8. And then the Lavaca Golden Arrows improved to 2-0. Had a big night from Cutler Winters, their junior quarterback, 217 yards and 4 touchdowns in a 36-7 win over Horatio. Lamar won their first conference game of the year because, like the 6A West, the 4A4 is a 9-team conference. So they've already started conference play. But now Lamar goes to Bauxite, and I'm sure you've heard this name. Marcus Wimberly is the big guy for Bauxite. He took a screen pass, 62 yards down the right sideline for a touchdown. They've also promoted a freshman quarterback who is the coach's son, who threw for 5 touchdown passes. So Bauxite's going to be a really tough matchup. Bauxite lost to Central Arkansas Christian on Friday night, 50-45. And you know who Central Arkansas Christian's coach or quarterback is? That's Grayson Wilson, who's also headed to Arkansas.
Yep.
And I, too, have a bonus.
Oh, I love a bonus.
Yep. Prairie Vaughn of Hackett earned her 1,000th assist last week and keeping the Lady Hornets undefeated at 8-0 and 4-0 in the conference in volleyball.
Well, and I've got even more of a bonus. Did I hear that the Pecola softball pitcher committed to Oklahoma? Did you hear that?
Yes, committed to Oklahoma yesterday. Sure did. And, Oklahoma's won 3 straight national championships.
They're just
so
a machine.
she's really good. There was a game last week. She threw a no-hitter, struck out, I think it was 14, and hit a grand slam.
That's a solid day at the office,
Yeah,
Rick.
there's nothing else you can do.
Yep. Can't wait to see them on Thursday.
All right. Well, that wraps up this week's edition of the Prep Rally podcast. You can listen to the Prep Rally podcast at nwaonline.com or watch it on YouTube or get it wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure and listen to watch Prep Rally Live later this week. Rick Fires and I will have some preseason predictions and maybe a thought or two about what we're going to be dealing with this weekend. So for Leland Barclay in the River Valley, for Ricky Fires here on the set with me, I'm Graham Thomas. Thank you for listening to the Prep Rally podcast. Have a great week.
The proceeding has been a production of Prep Rally Podcasts. Find us on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and more. And be sure to follow our hosts on social media.